In today's show, we talk with Pastor Darius Goode about what is a soul tie, how can you create a soul tie without having any intimate contact, and how does that help us during our divorce or after our divorce, and how does it challenge us in our divorce? So this is part one, and I'll see you inside. Hi, everybody, and welcome. I am Dana Williams, the founder of Redeemed Identity Ministries and the host of Redeemed Identity After Divorce podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Pastor Darius Goode. He is the author of 6 books and counting, including The Divorced Christian, which you've heard me say many things about on this show, and most recently, the book we're going to talk about today called Soul Ties. He is host of 3 podcast shows, The Divorced Christian, Marriage Material, Good Treasure. He's the radio host of Good Treasure Radio on WDJZ. That's the number 1530 on the radio dial. He is a musician and has produced music for music icon Whitney Houston. He's a senior pastor and a sought-after speaker for events. And in his free time, he's a husband and father to 6 beautiful babies, and his wife is pregnant with number 7. So please join me inside the studio to hear what he has to say about soul ties. And I am back with Pastor Darius Goode. I am so excited. I get so excited when we get to meet together because not only do I learn a lot, but you're such an encourager. You're just such a great encourager. And I'm constantly amazed at what you do and how you keep up with life. Because as I said in the intro, you're the dad of, gosh, I don't know, there's 47 kids now, and then there's 15 books. And you pastor a church and you have radio programs, and I'm over here struggling with one podcast going to YouTube. I can't do it. You're such an encourager. I've learned so much, and I'm constantly quoting your books and your teachings on Facebook and Instagram and all the social media platforms, because there's so much bad teaching about divorce. And you've been studying this, like you said, for 4 years. You've been studying this, and
Yes.
you've been studying you've gone from the rabbinical law of Moses all the way through
Yes.
Jesus. So there's no holes, and you're going to
No,
have
not at all.
none. And you're going to have a new book coming out in the next month or so called The Loophole. And oh my gosh, I'm very excited about it. We'll have you back on the show for that, because there's no holes in your teaching. You go from past to present. So so anyway. I'm just very impressed, and I'm fangirling a little bit.
Thank you.
And you're my first guest YouTuber, and hopefully, if all the software works right, you're going to be my first YouTube guest. So,
Very nice.
yes, well, of course, you're the first, of course. So, for those of you new to this subject, they're new to the subject and what it means to have a soul tie, because what we're talking about today is your book on soul ties. And I just did a teaching on this, and it was a real brief, nothing like your book, but it was a real brief on soul ties, and I think it's episode number 58. So any of my listeners, go back and listen to that. But you explain in chapter 2, to paraphrase, that the soul of a person encompasses our emotions, which it is. It's our mind and our will and our emotions. And it comes from the Greek word psyche and signifies breath, wind, the seat of feelings, desires, affections, and aversions. I'd never heard that. In the description for your book, you write, soul ties were created by God, and they connect and bind us to one another. You explain the purpose of soul ties and how they're formed, and you explain how to maintain, adjust when necessary, that's interesting, and also sever these ties. You will also explain how to remain free from toxic soul ties by noticing the triggers that cause them to reform. So this you had a lot of information in this book. Like I said, my teaching was very short and sweet. But in the first chapter, you talk about creating a soul tie with your wife when you were dating without any physical or sexual contact. Now, how did you achieve this? Those of us who are single would love maybe another partner, but how did you achieve that by that way?
You're starting out with the deep stuff.
We go right for the jugular right here.
Yeah. And I don't think I gave any explanation in the book of what I did or how
That's
bad.
why I'm asking.
All right. So I did it through the sense of smell, through the sense of smell. So just real quick, if you go through the scripture says that Peter, in the book of Acts, was healing people through his shadow. Now we never see Jesus do that, but Jesus explained to him, if you understand the kingdom, then you'll be able to do greater works than I do. Peter came to the point where he had this understanding and was able to watch Jesus to understand how he did certain things. And in doing so, once you understand the laws of how something works, then you could kind of branch out and say, hey, let me try this to see if this works. So when I was a child, my mother and father, this is pre cell phone days. My father never had a cell phone before he passed. My mother eventually got one. But back in those days, we had landlines. And I remember as a child, my mother would be in the kitchen cooking and she'd be like, oh, I need this item. And she would say, oh, I need John to call and I need him to call me so I could let him know to pick this up before he gets home. And do you know my dad would call within about 10 to 15 minutes? And that wasn't like one time. This was very consistent that I watched this between my mother and father. And I was, as a child, was like, how on earth do you do that? And I remember asking him, how do you know that mommy needs you to call? And he said, I would just feel like, let me call home and check, to see if there's anything I'm heading home and that sort of thing. This was very casual for them. But for me as a child, I recognized there's a bond between my mother and father. And so I always desired that level of relationship with my spouse. And so my wife, Chaz, when I began dating her, very spiritual woman, our connection was through spirituality. And so when I met her, we talked about God all the time, her dreams and visions and just different experiences. And so I asked her if she'd be willing to try something with me. She said, of course, she was open to it. And so what I did was I asked her to smell me, to smell my scent. And so she smelled me and that was it. And I want to say about 2 weeks later, she was at work and I called her and I asked her if she was alone. And she said, I am. I said, close your eyes. And then I said, can you smell me? And then she said the whole room like filled up with my scent. And she was like, how are you doing that? And I'm like, well, I'm just kind of understanding soul ties. I'm understanding these spiritual connections between people. And so that was how it transpired. And actually in the book, I go through to explain that the soul ties, it's not simply through physical touch, but through all the orifices. And so we'll get into that a little more, but it's, the eyes, the ears, the nose, taste, all of this contributes to building closeness and intimacy in a relationship.
Interesting. So I was trained a little bit about soul ties and in the context of an intimate relationship only. And you take this a step further and you teach that you can have a soul tie without intimacy, which is great when you're trying to stay pure and maintain and grow a relationship. So can you explain this though?
Yes. Well, the teachings that I think you and I have both probably been familiar with kind of define intimacy as physical. And intimacy is there's levels or four forms of intimacy. And so one is spiritual, one is physical, one is emotional, and one is intellectual.
Okay.
So I think that's where the church only focuses on one area of intimacy, but then misses the other three areas because the disciples had a level of intimacy with Jesus. So you had the 70, but then you also had the 12, and then you had the three that Jesus took with him, like on Mount Transfiguration. And so there was levels of intimacy, but none of them was physical intimacy with Jesus Christ.
Right.
That was really spiritual. It was emotional. He was their friend. He was their rabbi. They were his disciple. And so they're connecting with Jesus on a whole different level. And so when you look at it from that vantage point, the emotional intimacy deals with, so intimacy always deals with the exchange or sharing. So emotional will be the sharing of thoughts, sharing of feelings, sharing of experiences. So if I share something with you that I tell nobody else, we just had a private moment and I shared a very vulnerable experience that I might have had. This begins to create the bonds and a closeness between people. Physical intimacy is what the church is very familiar with that deals with, hugging, kissing, the sexual activity. The intellectual intimacy deals with the sharing of ideas, beliefs. It's engaging in very meaningful conversations. So with intellectual, it deals with the mental place. So we can connect on that level. But remember, intimacy means I don't share that with everybody. So you could be at work and at work, we had our freeze at work because they knew what was going on with you at home. Everyone else may not know. They may not know you're getting or in the process of being divorced. but your close friends at work know because we've built a relationship, we've built a bond. There's a level of sharing that we do that we don't share with everybody else. The last one will be spirituality. So where we connect on beliefs, we connect on our purpose, a sense of a higher purpose, our religion, that sort of thing. And that's why certain streams or doctrines, when a person might be a Christian, but you don't believe a certain way I do, we may not connect on those levels. But I connect with somebody else that believes the same way I do. So that's the spirituality part, not just, Christianity, but you might find two people that say, hey, we connected because we're both Buddhists, or we connected because we're both Muslim. You know what I'm saying? So that's another sense of connecting with a person as well. And so I think the church is only focused on the physical aspect, eliminated all the others. But we know as a fact that infidelity can be completely emotional and not physical.
That's true.
So with that being said, there was an emotional closeness that was created between, this man and a woman. And then the spouse is saying, well, I'm not cheating. Yeah, but if you're sharing things with them that you're not sharing with me, then yes, you have broken our covenant.
That's right. That's an emotional affair. That's absolutely right.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
And you talk about the 3 levels of the soul in man. Uh, and I don't know if I'm going to say these right. Nefresh, Yuach, and Neshama. Did I do that? Did I butcher it?
Oh no, I don't know how to pronounce them. I just know they're Hebrew words as a part of
Okay.
Judaism.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain those or give us a brief
Okay.
overview of it? I've never heard these
Yeah.
terms.
Okay. And you could Google this. So
Okay.
all the information I just did a lot of research. The first level, Nefesh, deals with the level of our soul that deals with, they call it like the animal soul or the vital soul. So it deals with your sense of survival. So now it deals with your drive, to basically live, to eat, be protected, to clothe yourself. It deals with the basic needs that becomes prioritized. So that's the first level of man. They feel like the second level of the soul now deals with, they define it as divine soul or the breath of life. And this deals with a higher level of intellect, higher consciousness. It deals with spirituality and connection to the divine. So this level kind of deals with the connection. No, I'm sorry, because that was level 3. Level 2, UACH, deals with the emotional soul.
Yes.
That's the emotional soul.
Okay. Okay.
So that deals with your sense of morality, and it deals with your sense of emotion. It deals with your character, and it deals with relationship. So then the third level is Neshama, and that deals with the higher sense of our relationship with God. So that deals with, religion, consciousness, higher levels of spirituality. So those will be the 3 levels. As you're saying, right, we're triune beings. Physical, what's your physical need? That's the basic level. The second level will be the emotional. And then the third level, we're spirit beings that deals with our connection to God.
Right. Okay. Well, and I'm giving myself extra points because I actually tried to pronounce the names. So now you explain that soul ties can be good, but they can also be problematic when unhealthy and toxic. And been there, done that. And how would you describe a soul tie that becomes toxic? How would a soul tie become toxic?
Okay. So for the soul tie to be created is done obviously through intimacy, closeness, sharing of information. Because the word intercourse, the church only focuses on physical intercourse or sexual intercourse. But if you look the word up, it also deals with the exchange verbally as we're talking to one another. So as you're receiving information from me, Jesus said, let my word be in you. So if you're receiving words from me, and now those words are changing and connecting with you emotionally, we're being affected by the things we share with each other. So those are the relationships that creates the soul tie and the closeness of 2 people. Now, once we do that, that's in a healthy sense. So we have mothers connected to their children, fathers connected to their kids, husband and wives. All these relationships are so tied together. We don't focus on them because they're healthy. Once they turn bad, now we say, oh, the soul tie, it needs to be severed. And we only focus on negative soul ties. So a negative soul tie is now that the relationship is close and you're vulnerable, your defenses are down. It says Adam and Eve were naked and unashamed. So once you're in that place of vulnerability and now it turns into insulting, being dismissive, degrading, the physical lashing out, lying, being deceptive,
Right.
now is becoming unhealthy. And then the next layer I would consider toxic once it's now turning either into physical violence, the intent to inflict pain, if it's even emotional pain, any harm or injury. I'm trying to destroy your career, trying to destroy your credit. I'm trying to ruin your life. Things along these lines now is a toxic relationship that needs to be broken and you need to run from it.
Right. It's because it's
But it's the
abuse.
soul time.
It's
It's
abuse.
absolutely abuse. Yeah.
And
And
the
the bottom
question,
line is you would never be abused by a stranger. Never. If I met somebody tomorrow and they insult me or put their hands on me, I don't know you. We keep our distance. The abuse is always a result of a soul tie.
right.
Is a result of that relationship that I can't get away from. So even as a man and a woman that, you can leave and pack up and leave. Well, yeah, you can fly to a whole nother state. But it's funny that the soul tie keeps you bound to that woman or bound to that man to say, you know what? I left the house, but I want to go back. I want to give it another try. That's the soul tie. And so that's what keeps us connected, even though the relationship turned bad or toxic. That's what keeps us connected to each other.
And I see so much of that just in ministry, counseling people. I see it on social media posts. I know I shouldn't go back because, he screams at me constantly and I know I'm abused, but I'm just always wanting to, I'm always wanting to check to see how he's doing. I'm always wanting to. So I try not
Yes,
to
yes,
get preachy in there, but it's like, no, you need to break this. This is a soul tie. You are now tied to this person.
absolutely.
And that's why. That's why. And it's like to be, I guess, more graphic, it's like the dog always going back to their own vomit, and it talks about
Yes,
that in Proverbs, and
yes,
don't do that, don't do
yes.
that.
It's unhealthy.
Yes, yes, it is. And then in your chapter on the negative soul ties, you talk about this in the context of divorce and remarriage, and this is really key. So I did an episode, like I said, on episode number 58, and it's called, the actual thing is called Breaking Soul Ties to Find Freedom. And I give a broad overview. You take this a step further when you talk about another type of soul tie manifests when individuals harbor intense animosity towards each other. So, why do you think that these intense emotions can create and even maintain our soul tie?
Right. So the intense animosity doesn't really form the soul tie,
Okay.
but what it does do, it keeps it intact. So let's say you say, well, I've moved on, me and my husband or me and my wife, we're now divorced, or we were in a very serious relationship. We have gone our separate ways. But you've reached a point of toxicity where you hate them
Right.
and I can't stand them. Well, that keeps you still connected to that person. The goal is to reach the place of indifference. So what we do is we still check on them. So even though I hate her, I still also know that she remarried. I know that she got a promotion at her job. I know. So you're keeping track of their life, which means you are still maintaining a level of connection to them. So soul ties, there's a closeness, and then you can adjust the soul tie. So me and my sister were very, very close. We still are. But once I married, my wife took a position in my life that now my sister takes a step back. I'm not on the phone all day with my sister. I don't hang out all day like I used to. Somebody else is now in a closer place in my life, my spouse. And so with that being said, as we began taking these step backs in the relationship, well, we decide I'm in the relationship, but yet you harbor this animosity and you want to check on them to make sure things aren't going well for them. You get angry when things are. You're still maintaining connection because you know where they are. You know what's going on with them. And so the place you have to get to is called the place of indifference, where I don't care if you're successful, God bless you. If things are bad for you, God bless you. But it's not my job to pray for you. And I know we can't preach this on Sunday mornings, but it's true. Sometimes you have to wash your hands, turn your back, and just keep going. And so Jesus gave us several examples about cutting off pieces of the body. He talks about the hand separating the hand from the body. That deals with you separating from something that they use the other example of a little leaven will leaven the entire lump. A little bit of sin will have a massive effect on the entire group. You got to cut off what is not healthy for you. A natural example is once the body begins to decay and die, they begin, amputation. They begin cutting off things that will rot and affect the entire body. And so even in our lives, I'm sorry, but there's people in our lives, I might have to go to a place of indifference. And so it doesn't matter if you're successful, doesn't matter if you're failing in life. I have had to move on. I'm no longer there. I'm no longer connected to you. Maybe there's other people that's praying for you, but that's not my prayer assignment. I'll only pray for you if the Lord says you need to lay on your face and intercede on their behalf, and then tell me what I'm praying about. But I'm not going to pray for you just because our marriage fell apart and now we're trying to do the godly thing. No, that keeps you connected.
Well, everybody, that's all we had time for today. So join us next week when we bring Pastor Darius back for part 2 of Soul Ties.